Some of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet aren't the loudest in the room. They aren't the ones desperately trying to impress everyone. They don't crave attention, and they don't feel the need to be surrounded by people every moment of the day. Instead, you'll often find them alone, reading, thinking, walking in silence, or simply observing the world while everyone else is busy trying to be noticed. At first glance, it looks strange. Some people assume they're antisocial. Others think they're arrogant. But what if they're neither? What if their solitude isn't a weakness, but a carefully chosen lifestyle? Psychologists have long studied why some people value solitude more than others. While intelligence alone doesn't determine whether someone is outgoing or reserved, many people who enjoy deep thinking also value uninterrupted time to reflect, create, and make sense of the world. So, why do so many thoughtful minds choose solitude over constant socializing? And what do they understand that most people don't? Today, we're about to find out. Have you ever noticed that some conversations leave you feeling energized, while others leave you completely drained? That's because not all conversations feed the mind. Some simply fill the silence. Many intelligent people don't avoid socializing because they dislike others. They avoid conversations that never go beyond the surface. The weather, celebrity gossip, who bought what, who offended who, the same discussions, repeated over and over again. To most people, that's normal, but to a mind that constantly seeks understanding, it feels empty. Thoughtful people are often drawn to conversations that challenge ideas rather than protect them. They'd rather spend an hour discussing human behavior, the mysteries of the universe, the psychology behind success, or the lessons hidden inside failure, than spend an entire evening talking about things that will be forgotten tomorrow. It's not about believing they're better than anyone else. It's about feeding a different kind of curiosity, because the more your mind grows, the more it begins to crave substance instead of stimulation. That's why solitude becomes so valuable. When nobody is talking, you finally get to hear your own thoughts. You begin connecting ideas, questioning old beliefs, finding answers that would have been impossible to discover in constant noise. Many philosophers, scientists, writers, and inventors deliberately set aside quiet time for this reason. Not because solitude automatically makes someone brilliant, but because uninterrupted thinking can help people explore ideas more deeply. And perhaps that's what makes silence so powerful. It doesn't give you answers. It gives you the space to find them. A curious mind isn't afraid of silence because silence is often where curiosity does its best work. But there's something else that changes as people begin to value solitude. They become far more careful about who they allow into their lives. And that changes everything. As intelligence grows, something else often changes. Your standards. Not because you suddenly believe you're better than everyone else, but because you begin to understand a truth that most people learn too late. The people around you quietly shape the person you become. Every conversation influences the way you think. Every friendship affects your habits. Every relationship either brings peace or slowly steals it. That's why many thoughtful people stop chasing quantity and start searching for quality. A room full of acquaintances can never replace one person who truly understands you. Because connection isn't measured by how many people know your name. It's measured by how many people understand your mind. As a result, intelligent people often become comfortable saying no. No to unnecessary drama. No to one-sided friendships. No to relationships built on convenience instead of respect. To outsiders, this can look cold. Some may even say, "You've changed." But sometimes, change isn't the problem. Growth is. When you begin valuing your time, not everyone will appreciate your boundaries. When you stop seeking approval, some people lose the influence they once had over you. And when you no longer tolerate disrespect, certain relationships naturally come to an end. That's not cruelty. It's clarity. Because one of the greatest signs of maturity isn't learning how to keep everyone in your life. It's learning who no longer belongs there. Intelligent people understand that protecting their peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. They know that every hour spent trying to please the wrong people is an hour taken away from becoming the person they're capable of becoming. And perhaps that's why they seem comfortable walking alone. Not because they're incapable of love, but because they've learned that loneliness is often less damaging than the wrong company. The people closest to you don't just influence your life, they quietly shape your future. But there's another reason solitude becomes so valuable. It gives you something that crowds rarely can: the freedom to think for yourself. One of the greatest dangers in today's world isn't a lack of information. It's the inability to think for yourself. Every day, millions of people adopt opinions they've never questioned. They follow trends they don't understand, repeat ideas they've never examined, and defend beliefs they never chose, not because they're incapable of thinking, but because they've never given themselves the time to. This is where solitude becomes powerful. When you're alone, there are no voices telling you what to believe, no crowd to impress, no pressure to agree. For the first time, you're left with only one thing: your own mind. And that's where real thinking begins. You start asking uncomfortable questions. Do I actually believe this? Am I chasing this goal because I want it, or because society expects it? Who would I become if nobody else's opinion mattered? These aren't easy questions. In fact, most people spend their entire lives avoiding them because questioning your beliefs is uncomfortable. It forces you to admit that some of your opinions may not even belong to you. But intelligent people understand something most never realize. Growth begins the moment you stop borrowing your thoughts from everyone else. History is filled with thinkers who challenged accepted ideas, not because they wanted to be different, but because they were willing to examine what others accepted without question. That doesn't mean every unpopular idea is correct. It means independent thinking requires both curiosity and humility, the courage to question, and the wisdom to change your mind when the evidence points elsewhere. That's why solitude is so valuable. It gives you the silence needed to separate your own voice from the thousands competing for your attention. In a world where everyone is trying to fit in, the rarest person is the one who has learned to think independently. Not loudly, not arrogantly, just honestly. The strongest mind isn't the one that follows every voice. It's the one that knows which voices to question. But here's the irony. The more comfortable you become with solitude, the more likely people are to misunderstand you. And that misunderstanding can become one of the greatest challenges an intelligent person will ever face. There's an interesting paradox about intelligence. The more deeply you think, the less understood you often become. Because the world celebrates people who are always visible, always talking, always posting, always surrounded by others. But thoughtful people often move differently. They don't feel the need to announce every achievement. They don't chase attention simply to prove their worth. And they don't measure their value by how many people know their name. To some, that seems strange. People begin to ask questions. Why are you always by yourself? Why don't you come out anymore? Why are you so quiet? What they don't realize is that silence doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes, silence is where a person feels most at peace. Unfortunately, many people confuse quietness with weakness, confidence with arrogance, boundaries with pride, and independence with loneliness. But those assumptions say more about the observer than the person being observed, because we often judge people through the lens of our own experiences. Someone who constantly needs attention may struggle to understand a person who finds fulfillment without it. Someone who fears being alone may assume everyone else fears it too. But intelligent people gradually learn something liberating. You don't need to be understood by everyone to live an authentic life. Trying to satisfy every opinion is exhausting. No matter what you do, someone will misunderstand you. Someone will criticize you. Someone will project their own insecurities onto your choices. And that's okay, because maturity isn't about convincing the world to understand you. It's about becoming comfortable with the fact that some people never will. The strongest people aren't those who win every argument. They're the ones who no longer feel the need to explain themselves to everyone. They let their character speak louder than their words. and they allow time to reveal who they truly are. Not everyone will understand your silence, and they don't have to. But here's an important question. Does science actually support the idea that intelligent people prefer being alone? The answer might surprise you. It's easy to make bold claims. Intelligent people always prefer being alone. Geniuses hate socializing. The smartest people never need anyone. They sound convincing, but the truth is far more interesting. Psychologists have spent decades studying personality, intelligence, and social behavior. And while there isn't a rule saying intelligent people avoid others, research does suggest that people who enjoy deep thinking, creativity, or intellectually demanding work often place a higher value on uninterrupted time. Why? Because complex thinking requires something that's becoming increasingly rare: silence. When your mind is constantly interrupted, it's difficult to concentrate, difficult to reflect, and even more difficult to create. That's why many writers, scientists, engineers, artists, and philosophers deliberately set aside time to be alone. Not because solitude magically makes someone intelligent, but because it creates an environment where deep work becomes possible. However, there's something equally important to understand. Intelligence doesn't have one personality. Some highly intelligent people are outgoing. They love collaboration. They enjoy meeting new people. Others prefer quiet environments where they can think without interruption. Neither approach is more intelligent than the other. The real difference lies in how people recharge their mental energy. Some recharge through meaningful conversations. Others recharge through meaningful solitude. And many need both. This is why we should be careful not to romanticize isolation. Being intelligent doesn't mean pushing everyone away. It means learning when solitude helps you grow, and when connection helps you grow. Because the goal isn't to escape people. The goal is to build a life where both reflection and healthy relationships have their place. True wisdom isn't found at one extreme. It's found in balance. Intelligence isn't measured by how often you're alone, but by how wisely you use your time, whether alone or with others. But balance is exactly where many people make a mistake, because solitude can become something far more dangerous: isolation. And knowing the difference could change everything. But here's where many people get it wrong. They hear that solitude is powerful, and they begin pushing everyone away. They stop answering messages. They avoid every social gathering. They convince themselves that needing no one is the same as becoming strong. But that's not wisdom. That's isolation. And the difference between the two could determine the direction of your life. Solitude is a choice. Isolation often becomes a prison. One helps you reconnect with yourself. The other slowly disconnects you from the world. At first, it doesn't feel dangerous. You tell yourself you're protecting your peace. You enjoy the silence. You appreciate the freedom. But if you're not careful, days become weeks. Weeks become months. And before you realize it, you've stopped allowing anyone close enough to truly know you. The human mind wasn't designed to exist without meaningful connection. We all need people who challenge us, who encourage us, who remind us that we're not fighting every battle alone. Even history's greatest thinkers had mentors, friends, students, or trusted companions. Their moments of solitude gave them clarity, but their relationships gave their ideas life. This is why true intelligence isn't about rejecting people. It's about choosing them wisely. Protect your peace, but don't let peace become an excuse to hide from the world. Build boundaries, but don't build walls so high that love, friendship, and opportunity can no longer reach you. Because strength isn't measured by how many people you've cut off. It's measured by your ability to recognize who deserves a place in your life and who doesn't. The wisest people understand that solitude is a tool, not a permanent destination, a place to recharge, to reflect, to grow, and then to return to the world stronger than before. The goal isn't to escape humanity. It's to become the kind of person who can live peacefully within it. But when solitude is used the right way, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your creativity deepens. Your vision becomes clearer, and the ideas that change your life often arrive in the moments when no one else is around. Let's explore why some of history's greatest breakthroughs were born in silence. There is something remarkable about silence, not because silence is magical, but because it's one of the few places where your mind is free from constant interruption. Think about it. How many of your best ideas came while scrolling through social media? Probably very few. Now think about the moments when inspiration arrived unexpectedly, during a quiet walk, late at night, while staring out of a window, or sitting alone with nothing but your thoughts. That's no coincidence. When the mind isn't overwhelmed by endless information, it has room to connect ideas in new ways. It reflects, it questions, it creates. That's why so many writers, inventors, artists, and entrepreneurs intentionally make time for uninterrupted thinking. Not because silence guarantees brilliance, but because creativity often needs space to breathe. The modern world has become addicted to constant stimulation. If there's a moment of silence, we reach for our phones. If there's a moment of boredom, we search for entertainment. We've become so uncomfortable with stillness that we've forgotten its value. But intelligent people understand something different. They don't fear boredom. They use it, because boredom forces the mind to wander. And sometimes, a wandering mind discovers answers a busy mind never could. This doesn't mean every great idea comes from being alone. Many breakthroughs happen through teamwork and collaboration. But solitude gives you something collaboration cannot: the opportunity to hear your own thoughts before they're shaped by someone else's opinions. Some of the biggest turning points in life don't begin with loud applause. They begin with one quiet decision. A decision to learn, to grow, to think differently, to become better than the person you were yesterday. And those decisions are often made in moments when nobody else is watching. Because the greatest battle you'll ever fight won't be against the world. It will be against the voice inside your own mind. The voice that says you're not enough, that you should give up, that you'll never become who you dream of being. And it's in solitude that you finally have the chance to answer that voice. Not with excuses, but with action. Silence doesn't create greatness. It creates the space where greatness has a chance to grow. But knowing the value of solitude isn't enough. The real question is, how do you use solitude to become wiser, stronger, and more fulfilled, without letting it turn into loneliness? That's what we'll explore next. By now, you understand why so many thoughtful people value solitude. But knowing why isn't enough. The real question is, how do you use solitude in a way that transforms your life, instead of trapping you? Because there's a difference between hiding from the world and preparing yourself for it. The first step is learning to become comfortable with your own thoughts. Most people avoid silence because silence forces them to confront themselves, their fears, their regrets, their insecurities, their unanswered questions. That's why they constantly seek distraction: music, social media, television, endless conversations, anything, to avoid being alone with their own mind. But intelligent people understand something different. You cannot change a person you've never truly met. And that person is yourself. Solitude gives you the opportunity to discover who you really are, without the pressure of pretending, without trying to impress anyone, without wearing the masks the world expects you to wear. It's where you begin asking questions like, what kind of life do I actually want? What habits are holding me back? Who am I becoming through my daily choices? Those questions can be uncomfortable, but they're also life-changing, because every meaningful transformation begins with honest self-reflection. Use your solitude to learn. Read books that challenge your thinking. Write down your ideas before they disappear. Take long walks without your phone. Sit quietly and observe your thoughts instead of running from them. Set goals. Review your mistakes. Plan your future. Become the kind of person who enjoys growing, even when nobody is watching. But never forget this: growth isn't measured by how long you stay alone. It's measured by who you become after those moments of solitude. The purpose of silence isn't to disconnect from life. It's to return to it with greater wisdom, to become more patient, more disciplined, more compassionate, more emotionally mature, because at the end of the day, the greatest victory isn't learning how to live without people. It's learning how to become someone who can build meaningful relationships without losing yourself in the process. The strongest people don't use solitude to escape the world. They use it to become better for the world. And that brings us to the most important lesson of all, the final truth about why intelligent people prefer being alone. A truth that has nothing to do with arrogance, superiority, or rejecting others, and everything to do with becoming the person you were meant to be. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about intelligent people isn't that they enjoy being alone. It's why they choose it. Because solitude isn't about escaping people. It's about finding yourself before the world tells you who you should be. Think about your own life. How many decisions have you made because you truly wanted them? And how many were made because you were afraid of being judged? How many dreams have been abandoned simply because they weren't popular? How many people spend their entire lives chasing approval, only to discover that approval never brings peace? The truth is, a mind that constantly depends on the opinions of others will never be completely free. Freedom begins the moment you stop allowing the outside world to decide your worth. That's what solitude offers. Not superiority, not perfection, but perspective. It reminds you that your value isn't measured by the size of your social circle, the number of people who applaud you, or the amount of attention you receive. It's measured by your character, your integrity, your ability to remain true to your values, even when no one is watching. And perhaps that's why some of the wisest people seem so comfortable in silence. They've discovered something the world spends a lifetime chasing: peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything, but the kind that comes from finally being enough for yourself. So, if you enjoy spending time alone, don't assume it makes you more intelligent than anyone else. But don't be ashamed of it either. Use those quiet moments wisely. Read, reflect, create, question your assumptions, strengthen your mind, and when it's time, step back into the world, not to seek validation, but to contribute something meaningful. Because the purpose of solitude was never to hide from life. It was to prepare you for it. One day, people may admire your confidence, your discipline, your wisdom, your calmness under pressure. They'll think those qualities appeared overnight. They won't see the early mornings, the difficult questions, the silent battles, or the countless hours you spent becoming the person they now respect. Because greatness is rarely built in front of an audience. It's built in the moments when nobody is watching. Your greatest strength isn't your ability to stand alone. It's your ability to leave solitude wiser than when you entered it. If this video changed the way you think about solitude, don't let the conversation end here. Subscribe for more videos on psychology, human behavior, self-mastery, and personal growth, where we explore the ideas that help you think more clearly, live more intentionally, and become the strongest version of yourself. And before you go, tell me in the comments, what's one lesson solitude has taught you that you could never have learned in a crowd?